G'day guys, we finally have the index for World Eaters in our hands, so let's have a look at what these blood-soaked maniacs can do in 10th edition Warhammer 40k.
Look for the Blood God.
Alrighty, let's have a look at some of the stratagems that are going to be available to World Eaters with this new index. There's some really spicy stuff in here that's going to combo really interestingly with some of the units and data sheets that we have available. So let's dig through them together, shall we? First we have Gory Massacre. It's used in the fight phase. It's used on one World Eaters unit from your army that made a charge move this turn and destroyed one or more enemy units. And the effect is, in your opponent's next command phase, each enemy unit within 6 inches of your unit must take a battle shock test. If the unit taking this test is below half strength, subtract 1 from enemy units affected by this stratagem. They do not need to take any other battle shock tests in the same phase. Alright, so this one's pretty cool, being able to go in there, charge something, kill it, and then anything within 6 inches of you in their command phase is going to have to take battle shock. That's really powerful. It's going to mean that you're interacting with your opponent's primary by stopping them from scoring objectives, because battle shocked units are reduced to OC 0. And it also means that you're going to be able to stop them from being able to use stratagems, things of that nature, which is going to make it a lot easier for you to interact with their army and a lot harder for them to interact with yours. So pretty cool stratagem, but of the stratagems available, this is actually one of my least favorites. Some of the spicy ones are coming up. Alright, next we have For the Skull Throne. So it's used in the fight phase on a World Eaters unit from your army that has not been selected to fight yet this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes a melee attack that targets a character, monster, or vehicle, you get to add 1 to the wound roll. Alrighty, so it's just like the old Veterans of the Long War from the previous Chaos Space Marine Codex, only it's only 1 command point, and it's going to be really powerful, especially in an edition where vehicles, monsters, and characters all just got significantly tougher, which is going to make it harder for your things like Berserkers to chew through. So being able to access that +1 to wound is going to be critical. It's also worth noting that this works on character units. Now, if a character joins a unit and becomes an attached unit, that is treated as one unit for all rules purposes, which means that is a unit with the character keyword, so you can use this stratagem to get +1 to wound when targeting that unit. So really incentivizes you to go in and hunt down those units that are trying to hide characters, and go in there and obliterate them and dig those characters out, drag them kicking and screaming, and claim their skulls for Khorne. Alright, next we have For the Blood God. So you use it in the fight phase just after a World Eaters unit from your army destroys an enemy unit. You use it on that World Eaters unit, and you make a Blessings of Khorne roll. You can use the results of this roll to activate 1 Blessing of Khorne. That Blessing of Khorne does not count towards your maximum number activated Blessings of Khorne, but all other rules for Blessings of Khorne apply. Alright, so this one's really interesting. You use it after killing an enemy unit in melee. So if your opponent goes first and they stay out of melee with you, you're going to be using this in essentially the last phase of the battle round, which means it's not going to be of a massive amount of utility because you're basically going to refresh it in the very next phase. The only exception to that is if you're going to try to resurrect Angron, and this essentially gives you another shot at doing that, which is really cool. But if you go first, there's also some interesting stuff here. So you're going to kill them in the melee phase, which means the things that buff your melee, your movement distance, advance, and charge, they're not particularly relevant because you're not going to get another movement phase before you reset this in the next battle round. But things like being able to always fight on death is a really cool one to activate. The Feel No Pain is a really cool one to activate. There's a whole ton of things that you can use this on in the fight phase that are going to last until the next battle round. So this is a really interesting stratagem and is going to have some niche abilities. I'm particularly interested in it in that it gives us another opportunity to try to resurrect Angron. So we've already seen that the probability of resurrecting Angron is relatively low, but when you stack on the fact that we can re-roll those rolls, we get this as an ability to do it multiple times per battle round, and then you also have units that are going to be able to give you re-rolls on top of that. there's some really interesting ways that we can make it so that it's very likely that you're going to be bringing back the Red Angel. All right, next we have one with an interesting name, Khorne Cares Not. So in the fight phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, one World Eater's unit from your army that was selected as one of those targets from one or more enemy units' attacks. Until the end of the phase, each time an attack targets your unit, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of the attack. Alright, so it's pretty expensive at 2 command points, and it doesn't really make sense calling it Khorne Cares Not because you're using it to protect one of your units, when in reality, if Khorne didn't care, he'd be just as happy with your units dying as he would with enemy units. So naming conventions aside, this is really, really powerful. Being able to subtract the damage of 1 means that if your opponent goes at you with 2 damage weapons, you can effectively halve the damage that they're going to put into you, which is going to make your units really, really, really durable. Further to that, if you're going into something that's, say, they're 3 damage and you're Terminators, being able to subtract 1 from their damage characteristic also doubles your durability, because previously every shot that got through would kill a Terminator or an 8-bound or whatever, but now they're going to require 2 shots to get through in order to kill you. So there's multiple different ways that you can use this stratagem to double the durability or halve the damage capacity of your opponent's units, and that's really, really spicy and is going to be very clutch. It's also worth noting you can use this on things like Angron, on things like a Lord of Skulls. You can use this on your really big, tough units as well. It's not limited in any capacity, so it just means that our tough stuff just got a whole ton tougher. Alright, next we have Blood Offering. You use it in any phase. You target it on one World Eater's unit from your army that was destroyed while it was within range of an objective marker that you controlled. You can use this stratagem on that unit even though it was just destroyed, and the effect is that that objective marker remains under your control even if you have no models within range of it until your opponent controls it at the start or end of any turn. Alright, so this is just a really good insulation in the shooting matchup, because one of the problems that World Eaters have often faced is that they just get shot off objective markers and then they have to walk out into the open to reclaim them while your opponent just keeps blasting you from downrange. Well, that's not going to work anymore. Now your opponent can shoot you off that backfield objective, but in order for them to stop you from scoring it, they're going to have to send their units into your lines to take that from you, which means that you're going to be able to, in some matchups, you're going to be able to leave your backfield abandoned, run forward, and if they try and shoot you off those backfield objectives, shoot those couple of spawn off it, shoot those jackals off that objective, it's not going to matter. You're going to be able to cap that objective anyway, which is going to help us with our primary scoring in this very, very tight and intense game. And last but not least, we have Honor the Prince. Apoplectic Frenzy. Your movement phase, one World Eaters unit from your army that's not been selected to move this phase. Until the end of the phase, if the unit advances, do not make an advance roll for it. Instead, until the end of the movement phase, add 6 to the movement characteristic of models in your unit. Alright, so this one is just straight up fire. Being able to add 6 inches to something that has the capacity to advance and charge via those blood offerings, the Blessings of Khorne. Being able to just go, cool, I'm going to move my 8-bound up, they're 9 inches. I'm going to get +2 movement from the Blessings of Khorne. Then I'm going to advance 6. Then I'm going to charge 2d6. You're going to be able to just send these guys across the table like missiles. They are just as fast as they ever were, even though they lost the pre-game move from the in Lord Invocatus, and they've got some different stuff in the way that they get their different movement shenanigans. They are still just as fast and just as terrifying on the tabletop, and this stratagem goes a long way towards facilitating that. So this is a really exciting one, and I think this is also going to pull off some really interesting surprise moves when you've got those berserkers inside a rhino somewhere, and they disembark out their 3, then they move their 6 inches plus their 2, then +6 from the advance, and then they charge their 2d6. You're going to be sending berserkers at insane speeds that people are not going to anticipate, because they're going to be like, oh yeah, berserkers in rhino, what are they, infantry? What do they move, like 6 inches? And it's like, well no, they actually move their 6 inches plus effectively an additional 8 inches from the various buffs that you can put on them, which just absolutely makes them function almost like jump pack units. So this one I think is going to be one of those ones that you're going to want to save CP for, because it's going to help get you out of those tricky situations. Alrighty, that's the stratagems from the World Eaters Codex, or Index. Let me know what you guys think. I personally think that almost every single one of these stratagems has significant impact on the game, and one of the hardest things World Eaters are going to have to deal with is deciding which stratagems to prioritize, because all of them are really good. Being able to use the Khorne Cares Not to increase the durability of your units is something that's going to be really, really clutch. But sometimes you're going to want to pivot into more of an aggressive and use your command points on advance and charge. So deciding when to pivot from that defensive playstyle into an aggressive playstyle is going to be something that is going to be a skill that World Eaters are going to have to master in order to dominate the tabletops. So let me know which stratagems you think are the best, and let's get into the next section.
One for the Blood God.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable,